Have you ever wondered what happens to the spark of your awareness when the physical vessel that carries it comes to a quiet halt? We are taught to think of the end of life as sudden darkness, a final absolute silence where thought and feeling cease to exist. But what if the transition from this life is not an ending, but rather an unprecedented expansion? What if the fading of our biological rhythm is merely the prelude to a cosmic symphony we are just beginning to mathematically understand? This is not a collection of ghost stories, nor a supernatural fantasy meant to frighten you. This is a quiet, gentle journey into the rigorous, breathtaking, and terrifyingly beautiful reality of human consciousness and its profound connection to the fabric of the cosmos. If you have ever looked at the night sky and felt a fleeting connection to something vast and ancient, take a moment to settle into your space. Take a slow, deep breath and prepare to explore the ultimate mystery. We are going to venture into the uncharted borderlands of life and death, guided by the precise instruments of modern neuroscience, the laws of physics, and the mind-bending realities of quantum mechanics. For most of human history, the boundary between life and death was considered an impenetrable wall, a frontier beyond which no scientific instrument could reach. We assumed that when the heart stopped beating and lungs ceased to draw breath, the brain simply powered down like a machine, unplugged from electricity. It was a logical assumption, grounded in observable biology. But the universe is rarely as simple as our everyday observations suggest. To appreciate the paradox of what happens at the edge of existence, we must understand the staggering complexity of the organ generating our reality. The human brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons, a number so vast it rivals the estimated stars in the Milky Way galaxy. These neurons are connected by hundreds of trillions of tiny junctions called synapses, creating a living network of electricity and chemistry, constantly shifting and adapting. Every memory you hold dear, every emotion you have ever felt, is encoded in the complex firing patterns of this biological masterpiece. When awake and active, our brains operate primarily on beta waves, fast and chaotic electrical pulses, helping us navigate the physical environment. When we relax, the rhythm slows down into gentle alpha waves. In the deepest stages of sleep, massive delta waves wash over our neural pathways, like slow rhythmic ocean tides. And then there are gamma waves. Gamma waves are the fastest measurable brain waves, oscillating at frequencies of 30 to 100 cycles per second. They are associated with moments of extreme focus, deep meditative states, and a profound sense of unity and lucidity. For a long time, scientists believed gamma waves required a healthy, fully oxygenated brain to exist, demanding immense metabolic energy to sustain. But recent discoveries have completely shattered this foundational assumption, revealing a contradiction, forcing us to rethink everything we know about consciousness. In recent years, researchers monitoring the electroencephalograms of patients during their final moments recorded something defying all biological logic. Instead of a predictable dimming of electrical activity as oxygen levels plummeted, instruments detected a sudden, explosive surge of highly organized, synchronized energy. In the moments immediately surrounding clinical death, when the heart stopped and blood ceased to flow, the dying brain did not fade quietly into the night. It lit up. Specifically, data showed a massive, temporary spike in gamma wave activity, precisely the frequency associated with hyperlucidity and deep unitive consciousness. This spike was highly structured and globally synchronized across different regions of the brain. The brain, in its final physical moments, was functioning at a level of coherence and intensity rarely seen in the normal, waking state of healthy individuals. How can an organ deprived of oxygen suddenly generate the most energy-intensive electrical patterns known to neuroscience? This is the paradox sitting at the center of our quiet journey today. It challenges basic intuition about how life and energy operate. Think about the first law of thermodynamics, one of the most fundamental rules of the ancient cosmos. It states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change form. Your brain operates on about 20 watts of continuous electrical power, enough to illuminate a dim reading bulb. For your life, this gentle current has sustained your inner world, processing the light of distant stars and keeping the rhythm of your biological clock. When the physical structure of the brain begins to break down, that 20 watts of electrical energy does not vanish into nothingness. The first law of thermodynamics forbids it. The energy must transform. It must release into the wider universe. But what does it mean for the organized energy of a human mind to release into the vastness of space? To begin to answer this, we must look beyond the human skull and gaze outward into the endless architecture of the cosmos. When astrophysicists map the large-scale structure of the universe across billions of light years, they see a hauntingly familiar pattern. The universe is organized into a colossal cosmic web with long filaments of dark matter and luminous galaxies connecting incredibly dense nodes separated by quiet voids of empty space. When you place a magnified image of a biological neural network next to a simulation of the cosmic web, the visual similarity is breathtaking. The branching connections, the nodes of intense activity, the delicate threads bridging immense gaps. The architecture of your mind mirrors the architecture of the infinite universe. It is as if the cosmos repeats its fundamental patterns across scales ranging from the microscopic landscape of the human brain to the multi-billion light-year expanse of intergalactic space. This structural resonance between the mind and the universe is more than a poetic metaphor. It is a clue pointing toward a deeper reality. If the brain is built like the universe, is it possible that consciousness is not generated entirely within the biological tissue of our heads, but rather received by it? Like an advanced radio tuning in to a fundamental frequency of awareness permeating the quiet cosmos. When patients revived from clinical death share their near-death experiences, they rarely describe losing their minds. On the contrary, they universally report a sense of enhanced reality, a feeling of being more awake, aware, and profoundly connected to the universe. They speak of moving through a gentle, peaceful darkness, encountering unimaginable brilliance, and experiencing sudden comprehension of the ancient mysteries of existence. These subjective reports align perfectly with the objective spikes in gamma-wave activity recorded by scientific instruments. The terrifying truth is not that we disappear into nothingness, but that our individual awareness might dissolve into something infinitely larger. As we embark on this contemplative journey together, we will slowly untangle this mystery. We will examine human perception and how our brains construct reality. We will explore the bizarre world of quantum entanglement, where particles remain intimately connected across endless stretches of space and time. We will look at exact data from medical studies on cardiac arrest survivors, analyzing cases where human beings perceived verifiable events while completely brain dead. We will gently confront the fear of the unknown, transforming the terrifying concept of death into a wondrous, peaceful transition of energy. Our exploration requires humility, for the universe is vastly older and stranger than our intuition is prepared to accept. But there is profound peace in this understanding. By recognizing our place in the cosmic order, by understanding that the spark of our awareness is intertwined with the eternal energy of the cosmos, we can see ourselves as integral parts of a living universe. In the chapters to come, we will travel beyond the confines of our physical bodies, journeying through the hidden dimensions of space and the silent territories of the human mind. We will let the rigorous data of science guide us, while allowing the poetic beauty of the cosmos to calm our anxieties. We will question the nature of time, memory, and identity, seeking to understand what remains when the biological shell is left behind. It is a quiet, contemplative path we are taking, one demanding patience, curiosity, and a willingness to marvel at creation. You are not alone on this journey. We will explore this endless mystery together, taking comfort in the vastness of the unknown and finding peace in the search for truth. So let your mind relax, let your breathing slow, and prepare to look deeper into your existence than you ever thought possible, as we prepare to uncover the first layer of the beautiful truth about near-death experiences and the universal consciousness connecting us all. Have you ever wondered if the solid world you touch, the vibrant colors you see, and the quiet sounds you hear are truly the fundamental reality of the universe, or simply a comforting translation crafted by your biology? When you run your hand along a wooden table, it feels dense, immovable, and undeniably real. But if we look through the lens of physics, this perception is a beautiful, necessary illusion. To understand what happens to our consciousness when we reach the boundary of life, we must first understand how our minds construct the world while we are living. We are embarking on a journey into the architecture of reality itself, peeling back the layers of the everyday to reveal the staggering, quiet mystery underneath. Let us begin with the concept of light and sight. The human eye is a marvel of evolutionary engineering, developed over millions of years to help us survive. But it is also an incredibly restrictive filter. Of the entire electromagnetic spectrum that washes through the cosmos every single second, our eyes are capable of perceiving only a tiny, fragile sliver. We see roughly 0.0035% of the light that actually exists in the universe. The rest of the cosmos is largely invisible to us without the aid of sophisticated scientific instruments. When powerful telescopes from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration or the European Space Agency look up at the dark night sky, they do not just see the visible starlight that you and I see. They see a sky ablaze with ancient microwaves left over from the dawn of creation, rushing toward us from the very beginning of time. They see roaring jets of X-rays erupting from supermassive black holes located millions of light years away. They capture the gentle, invisible infrared glow of stellar nurseries hidden behind thick curtains of cosmic dust, where new suns are currently being born. All of this magnificent, violent, and beautiful activity is happening right now, passing through the room where you are resting, completely unnoticed by your biological senses. The universe is a grand symphony of radiation, yet our biology has equipped us to hear only a single, isolated note. This physical limitation is not a flaw in our design, but a brilliant survival mechanism. If your brain were forced to process every frequency of light and every subatomic interaction occurring in your immediate environment, you would be instantly paralyzed by the infinite complexity of it all. Your mind acts as a protective reducing valve, narrowing the chaotic energy of the cosmos down into a neat, manageable reality where you can find safety and navigate the quiet moments of your day. But what exactly happens when that protective reducing valve begins to close for the final time? What happens to the water of a rushing, powerful river when the dam holding it back is suddenly removed? During a near-death experience, as the biological systems that filter and construct our everyday reality begin to shut down, patients universally report an expansion of perception rather than a contraction. They do not fade into nothingness. They awaken into everything. Survivors describe seeing colors that simply do not exist on Earth, hearing sounds of impossible mathematical harmony, and experiencing a sense of panoramic vision that allows them to perceive all directions simultaneously, without the need to turn a physical head. It is as if the sudden failing of the biological filter allows the unadulterated, infinite reality of the universe to flood in. To fully comprehend how this could be physically possible, we must travel downward past the macroscopic scale of cells and molecules into the baffling, counterintuitive, and deeply mysterious realm of quantum mechanics. For over a century, the brightest physicists in the world have wrestled with experiments that completely defy our intuitive understanding of how the physical world should behave. The most famous of these is the double-slit experiment, a foundational pillar of quantum physics that reveals a truth so strange it almost sounds like a mystical revelation. When scientists fire individual particles of light, called photons, at a physical barrier with two small slits, the particles behave in a way that is mathematically impossible to explain using classical Newtonian physics. If the scientists do not set up a detector to measure exactly which slit the photon passes through, the particle acts like a wave of pure probability. It passes through both slits simultaneously, interfering with itself and creating a complex wave pattern on the wall behind the barrier. In this state, it exists as a pure potential, occupying multiple realities at once in a quiet, undisturbed mathematical space. But the moment the scientists place a detector to observe and record which slit the particle enters, the wave of potential instantly collapses. The photon is forced to choose. It behaves like a solid particle, passing through only one slit and creating a simple, predictable pattern. The mere act of observation, the presence of a measuring consciousness or instrument, fundamentally alters the physical behavior of matter. The universe, it seems, responds intimately to being watched. This quantum paradox brings us to a profound, paradigm-shifting existential question. If the fundamental building blocks of the cosmos exist only as waves of probability until they are observed, what does that make the observer? For decades, brilliant scientific minds have pondered this quiet mystery. The physicist John Archibald Wheeler proposed the revolutionary idea of a participatory universe. He suggested that we are not simply passive bystanders watching the cosmos from the outside, separated from the machinery of reality by a thick pane of glass. Instead, we are essential components of the machinery itself. Our observation is the catalyst that brings the universe from a state of formless potential into a definite state of physical existence. As the great astronomer Carl Sagan so beautifully and memorably articulated, we are a way for the cosmos to know itself. The nitrogen in our deoxyribonucleic acid, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, all of it was forged in the unimaginably hot interiors of collapsing ancient stars. We are, quite literally, made of star stuff. But the implications of quantum mechanics suggest that perhaps we are not just the physical matter of the universe temporarily organized into human form. Perhaps our consciousness is the very foundational mechanism by which the infinite cosmos experiences its own existence. Let that profound thought settle gently into your mind for a moment. Feel the slow, steady rhythm of your breathing. Notice the quiet silence of the space around you and recognize that the awareness allowing you to hear and understand these words is intimately connected to the deepest fabric of reality itself. When medical researchers look at the human brain during the dying process, and they record those sudden, highly organized bursts of gamma waves sweeping across the neural network, they are perhaps witnessing something far more significant than the random firing of dying neurons. They might be watching a profound cosmic transition. The consciousness that was once heavily focused on navigating the physical world collapsed into a single point of linear perspective by the biological brain is suddenly released from its constraints. It is returning to a state of pure, uncollapsed, wave-like potential. Survivors of clinical death often struggle to find the vocabulary to describe this state. They describe a feeling of being everywhere at once, of dissolving into a vast, loving light that feels infinitely more real than anything they ever experienced while walking on the surface of the earth. They are not describing an ending, but a return to the underlying quantum reality from which all things originally emerge. The silence they encounter in that space is not the empty, terrifying void of non-existence that we so often fear. It is the pregnant, infinite, vibrant silence of pure potential. The great fear of death that haunts humanity often stems directly from the illusion of separation. We are conditioned to believe that we are isolated physical objects moving through a cold, indifferent, and mechanical universe. When the object eventually breaks down, as all physical objects must, we assume the story is completely over. But modern physics and the rigorous study of human consciousness are gently pointing us toward a much more comforting, awe-inspiring, and wondrous conclusion. The boundary between you and the vast universe is highly porous, an illusion created for your survival. The spark of awareness inside you is not generated by the organic matter of your brain. It is merely filtered by it, tuned to a specific frequency, like a radio receiver. When the biological filter finally falls away, the awareness does not vanish into the dark. It expands outward, returning to the source. The journey of your consciousness is ancient, profound, and ongoing. Every single atom currently composing your physical body has existed since the dawn of cosmic time, transforming over billions of years from the fiery core of a star to drifting planetary dust to the living, breathing tissue that now temporarily houses your magnificent mind. Why should the invisible energy of your awareness be any different? The foundational laws of thermodynamics assure us that nothing in this universe is truly lost. The cosmos is a masterful, elegant recycler of both matter and energy. The quiet peace and profound serenity reported by those who have approached the ultimate threshold and returned is a powerful testament to the fundamental safety of this cosmic transition. They return to tell us that the other side of the veil is not a place of judgment or darkness, but a state characterized by an overwhelming sense of unconditional love and deep, abiding calm. In the chapters to come, we will dive even deeper into the specific, verifiable medical data that supports these extraordinary claims. We will explore astonishing cases where individuals with absolutely zero brain function were able to accurately describe specific events happening in the hospital room around them, challenging the very foundations of what neurology thought it understood about the mind. We will look at the exact mechanisms of memory and how the life review process, universally reported in near-death experiences, might be a fundamental property of how the universe itself records and stores information. But for now, allow yourself to rest quietly in the comfort of this expanded cosmic perspective. You are not a fragile, temporary accident of biology spinning pointlessly on a rock in space. You are an ancient, infinite participant in the grandest, most beautiful story ever told. You are the universe slowly waking up, looking at its own hands, and marveling at the mystery of its own existence. Let the vastness of the cosmos hold you in its gentle, ancient embrace, and know that your journey of discovery is truly endless. Have you ever stopped to carefully consider the exact physical location of your own thoughts? When you recall the gentle warmth of the sun on your skin during a childhood summer, or feel a sudden quiet surge of love for someone dear, where exactly in the universe do those profound experiences live? For centuries, the scientific establishment has operated on a simple, mechanical assumption. Your consciousness and your entire sense of self are securely locked inside the dark, silent vault of your human skull. We are taught that the brain is the sole generator of the mind, just as an engine generates forward motion in a vehicle. It is a logical, comforting perspective, helping us navigate everyday life. But as we continue our journey into the deepest mysteries of existence, we must gently confront a terrifying and beautiful truth emerging from the most rigorous emergency rooms and cardiac care units around the globe. The prevailing mechanical view of the human mind is being quietly dismantled by empirical, verifiable medical data defying everything we thought we understood about the boundary between life and death. To truly understand the vastness of your own consciousness, we must examine what happens in the precise moments when the biological engine comes to an absolute halt. Let us look closely at the medical definition of clinical death. When a human heart stops beating in a state of cardiac arrest, the flow of oxygenated blood to the brain ceases immediately. Within 2 to 20 seconds of this circulatory failure, the cerebral cortex, the outer layer of the brain, responsible for conscious thought, memory, and sensory processing, completely shuts down. If you were to attach an electroencephalogram machine to a patient in this state, the chaotic, beautiful electrical waves of life would instantly vanish, replaced by a cold, flat line. From a strict neurological perspective, a flat electroencephalogram means the brain is totally offline. The organic hardware is functionally dead, and therefore, according to classical biology, the software of consciousness must also be completely erased. There should be no subjective experience, no formation of memories, no visual processing, and absolute, empty silence. Yet, it is precisely in this state of profound biological silence that the most astonishing and mathematically impossible events are recorded. Over the past several decades, large-scale international medical studies involving thousands of cardiac arrest survivors have collected rigorous data challenging our most fundamental assumptions. These are not anecdotal stories passed down through generations. These are heavily documented clinical observations conducted by highly trained doctors and nurses in controlled hospital environments. Researchers have found that a significant percentage of patients who are successfully resuscitated from clinical death report highly lucid, exceptionally vivid experiences occurring during the exact time frame when their brains were electrically silent and clinically dead. The immediate scientific impulse is to dismiss these experiences as hallucinations, the desperate firings of a dying organ starved of oxygen. But hallucinations are deeply subjective, fragmented, and chaotic, much like a fever dream. The near-death experiences reported in these clinical settings, however, are universally described as more real, more organized, and more hyper-lucid than everyday waking life. And most importantly, they contain verifiable data that a hallucinating, unconscious brain could not possibly generate. In the sterile, frantic environment of an emergency resuscitation, doctors and nurses are entirely focused on chest compressions, administering life-saving medications, and using defibrillators. The patient on the table is deeply unconscious, eyes taped shut, completely unresponsive to external stimuli, with a flatlined brain. Yet, upon being revived, a remarkable number of these patients are able to accurately and calmly describe the exact events of their own resuscitation. They speak of floating gently above their physical bodies, looking down at the medical team with a sense of profound peace and detachment. They accurately describe the specific hidden surgical instruments used by the doctors, tools they had never seen before in their waking lives. They report the exact conversations, the panicked commands, and the precise sequence of medical procedures occurring while they were clinically dead. In some extensively documented cases, patients have even described highly specific events happening in entirely different rooms of the hospital, such as conversations between family members in a waiting area down the hall. How can an organ completely deprived of the fundamental biological fuel required to process reality accurately observe, record, and recall complex visual and auditory information from a vantage point outside the physical body? This is the paradox forcing the scientific community to reconsider the very nature of existence. If the brain is completely offline, and yet the mind continues to operate with enhanced clarity and expanded spatial awareness, then the mind cannot be exclusively generated by the brain. To understand this terrifying and wondrous reality, we must return to the profound concepts we explored previously, looking beyond biology and into the deeper architecture of the infinite cosmos. Imagine for a moment listening to a beautiful symphony on an antique radio receiver. The music fills the room, carrying intricate melodies and soaring harmonies. If you were to open the back of the radio and pull out a critical wire, the music would instantly stop. A person who only understands physical mechanics might conclude the radio itself was generating the symphony, and the destruction of the radio means the absolute death of the music. But we know the radio is merely a specialized instrument designed to tune into invisible electromagnetic frequencies washing through the silent air. The symphony is still playing, broadcasted from a distant tower, traveling through the vastness of space at the speed of light, entirely unaffected by the breaking of the physical receiver. The medical data surrounding near-death experiences strongly suggests the human brain operates in a very similar manner. It is the most sophisticated, mathematically complex receiver in the known universe, but it is still just a receiver. When the biological machinery fails, when the flat line appears on the monitor and the physical eyes close for what seems like the final time, the broadcast of your consciousness does not end. The signal simply separates from the broken receiver. The awareness you call your sense of self expands, returning to the invisible, fundamental quantum field from which all matter and energy in the vast cosmos originate. Patients returning from this state universally describe a feeling of being unburdened, of dropping a heavy physical limitation and expanding into an infinite, ancient, and loving reality. The silence they experience is not the terrifying void of non-existence, but the quiet, majestic peace of the universe itself. The verifiable observations they make while out of their bodies are possible because their consciousness is no longer tethered to the physical limitations of biological eyes and ears. They are experiencing reality directly, outside the constraints of linear time and localized space constructed for our survival. This realization fundamentally alters our relationship with mortality. The boundary we have feared for all human history is not a solid wall of darkness, but a gentle, permeable membrane. Your consciousness, your unique perspective on the infinite wonders of the cosmos, is not a fragile, temporary accident of organic chemistry. It is a fundamental property of the universe, as ancient and indestructible as the light from the most distant galaxies captured by our space telescopes. The rigorous medical data we are collecting is slowly pulling back the veil, revealing a universe where life and death are not opposing forces, but different stages of a continuous, infinite journey. The knowledge we gather, the love we share, the quiet moments of wonder we experience when looking at the night sky. None of this is lost in the transition. It is integrated into the vast cosmic memory of the universe itself. As you rest here, contemplating the incredible resilience and expansiveness of your own mind, allow a deep sense of peace to wash over you. You are part of an ancient, ongoing mystery, a grand cosmic dance where energy simply transforms and expands. The terrifying truth of near-death experiences is only terrifying to the ego, to the small part believing it is isolated from the rest of creation. To the deeper, quieter part of your awareness, this truth is profoundly liberating. It is an invitation to live with less fear and more wonder, knowing you are safely held within the infinite embrace of a universe far more magical and interconnected than our biological senses can ever fully comprehend. In the next stage of our journey, we will explore the specific mechanism of the life review, a universal phenomenon where time itself seems to collapse, allowing individuals to experience every moment of their existence simultaneously. And we will discover what this reveals about the fundamental physics of time and memory in the cosmos. But for now, simply breathe and know your journey is endless. Your awareness is infinite, and you are intimately connected to every star shining in the vast, quiet dark. Have you ever desperately wished to hold on to a beautiful, fleeting moment, trying to freeze time just as the sun sets in a brilliant wash of gold and violet across the quiet evening sky? We experience time as a relentless, unidirectional river, carrying us constantly forward from a forgotten past, through a fragile, instantaneous present, and toward a vast, unknown future. This perception is so deeply embedded in our biology that to question it feels almost absurd. You wake up, you live through your day, and you go to sleep, following the strict ticking of the mechanical clocks that govern our civilization. But what if this linear river of time is merely another magnificent, comforting illusion constructed by our biology? What if the past is not gone, the future is not empty, and every single moment of your existence is permanently etched into the very fabric of the cosmos? As we continue our gentle journey into the deepest mysteries of universal consciousness and the terrifying, beautiful reality of near-death experiences, we must now gently dismantle our intuitive understanding of time itself. We are going to explore the profound phenomenon known as the life review, a universal experience reported by those who have stepped over the threshold of mortality. And we will discover how this mystical-sounding event aligns perfectly with the most rigorous, mind-bending theories of modern physics. To understand how time might behave outside the strict constraints of the biological human brain, we must look to the towering genius of theoretical physics. Over 100 years ago, Albert Einstein fundamentally rewrote the rules of the universe with his groundbreaking theories of relativity. He demonstrated through precise mathematical equations that space and time are not separate, rigid stages upon which the dramatic events of the cosmos play out. Instead, they are intimately woven together into a single, flexible, four-dimensional fabric called space-time. The great physicist realized that the distinction between the past, the present, and the future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. In the framework of physics known as the block universe theory, every event that has ever happened, and every event that will ever happen, exists simultaneously within this massive, ancient, four-dimensional block. Imagine an endless reel of movie film. When you hold the heavy reel in your hands, every single frame of the movie, from the very beginning to the absolute end, exists at the exact same moment in physical space. The characters living inside the movie only experience their story sequentially, because the film is being passed through a bright projector, illuminating one frame for a tiny fraction of a second. Your consciousness, tightly anchored inside your biological brain, acts as this projector. It moves steadily along your specific timeline, illuminating one fragile frame of reality at a time, creating the persistent illusion of a flowing, linear progression. Now, consider carefully what happens when the physical projector finally loses power and the biological heart stops beating. Thousands of rigorously documented medical case studies of cardiac arrest survivors contain astonishing accounts of a profound event called the life review. In the quiet, absolute stillness of clinical death, individuals universally report suddenly experiencing the entirety of their existence all at once. This is not a fuzzy, distant memory playing out like a faded slideshow in the mind. It is a hyperlucid, panoramic immersion into every single second they have ever lived. They feel the gentle joy of their proudest accomplishments, the quiet sorrow of their deepest regrets, and the mundane, forgotten seconds of everyday life, all simultaneously present. More astonishingly, they do not just experience these moments from their own limited, isolated perspective. They describe feeling the exact, unfiltered emotions of the people they interacted with throughout their lives. If they caused someone physical or emotional pain, they feel that specific pain as if it were their very own. The linear constraint of time is completely shattered, and the rigid boundaries separating individual perspectives dissolve entirely into a unified, vast ocean of shared conscious experience. How can the architecture of our reality possibly support such an overwhelming, simultaneous processing of detailed information? For the answer, we must gaze outward into the deepest, darkest corners of the cosmos, looking closely at the physics of information itself. In the realm of quantum mechanics and advanced astrophysics, information is not just an abstract philosophical concept. It is a fundamental physical property of the universe, as critical and real as mass or energy. The great theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking spent decades exploring the mysterious, terrifying boundary of black holes, those ancient, infinite wells of gravity where the fundamental rules of physics are pushed to their absolute breaking point. His groundbreaking work led to the development of the holographic principle. This mind-bending theory suggests that all the three-dimensional information contained within any given region of space can be perfectly mathematically described and permanently encoded on the two-dimensional boundary surrounding it. Like a sophisticated security hologram on a card that contains a fully three-dimensional image, the entire complex history and physical state of the universe might be perfectly preserved on its cosmological boundary. The universe is not a chaotic, forgetful void where actions disappear into nothingness. It is the ultimate, indestructible repository. Every single photon of light emitted by an ancient star billions of years ago, every violent collision of subatomic particles, and every quiet, unspoken thought generated by your complex human brain is permanently recorded in the holographic fabric of reality. When we connect the rigorous physics of the holographic principle and the block universe with the profound subjective reports of the Life Review, a terrifyingly beautiful picture of our human existence begins to slowly emerge. The spark of consciousness inside you is not just navigating a temporary, fleeting life on a small, rocky planet. It is actively writing permanent information into the eternal, indestructible structure of the cosmos. During a near-death experience, as the energy of consciousness expands far beyond the failing biological receiver, it regains its natural access to the entire reel of film. It steps out of the linear projector and perceives the block universe from a much higher dimension. The Life Review is not a harsh judgment handed down by an external authoritarian force seeking to punish you. It is the natural, unavoidable physical consequence of expanding your awareness into a realm where all information is instantly and simultaneously accessible. The great astronomer Carl Sagan often reminded us that we are a way for the cosmos to know itself. You are simply remembering yourself exactly as the universe remembers you. You are feeling the profound ripples your actions sent out into the interconnected cosmic web, ripples that will continue to echo across the vast silence of space long after your physical form has gently returned to the stardust from which it was originally forged. Let the profound, heavy weight of this magnificent reality settle gently into your thoughts. Feel the rhythm of your heart, a steady, biological clock marking your physical journey through this specific segment of the eternal timeline. You are a vast, infinite being, temporarily exploring a highly localized, linear perspective. The tremendous challenges you face, the quiet moments of heartbreaking sorrow, and the overwhelming waves of pure joy are all essential parts of a grand cosmic curriculum designed for your expansion. When the time eventually comes to lay down the biological projector for the final time, you will not fade into an empty nothingness. You will simply awaken to the stunning totality of what you have always been, experiencing the infinite wonder and beauty of your entire existence in a single, perfectly lucid moment of universal comprehension. In the next chapter of our ongoing journey, we will explore the terrifying, breathtaking concept of the collective unconscious, examining exactly how individual human minds might be secretly entangled with one another, communicating across vast distances instantaneously. And we will look at the rigorous quantum physics suggesting that the separation between human beings might be the ultimate comforting illusion. But for now, allow the deep silence of the cosmos to cradle your mind. Find true peace in the eternal nature of your own experiences, and prepare to venture even further into the beautiful, welcoming unknown. Have you ever experienced a moment so intuitive that words completely failed to capture it? Perhaps you felt an inexplicable pang of sorrow moments before a loved one called to share tragic news. Or you locked eyes with a stranger and felt an instantaneous, deep recognition defying all logic. We are conditioned by our physical senses to believe we are entirely separate entities, isolated islands of consciousness walking the earth in lonely biological spacesuits. The space between your body and mine appears empty, a physical void, guaranteeing our individual solitude. But what if this feeling of separation is yet another masterful trick of evolutionary biology? What if the quiet silence between us is actually filled with an invisible, ancient, and infinite network of communication? We are only just beginning to mathematically understand. As we continue our gentle journey into the mystery of human consciousness, we must confront a reality that is both deeply unsettling and extraordinarily beautiful. We are going to explore the terrifying truth that you are not alone inside your head, and that the boundaries defining where you end and the rest of the universe begins are almost entirely illusory. To grasp this, we must dive into the microscopic, counterintuitive world of quantum mechanics and a physical phenomenon that deeply troubled even the most brilliant minds of the 20th century. In the 1930s, Albert Einstein mathematically described a theoretical scenario that seemed to break the fundamental laws of physics. They called it quantum entanglement. When two subatomic particles interact in specific ways, they can become deeply linked, entering a shared state of existence. If you take these two entangled particles and separate them by vast distances, even placing one on Earth and the other on a planet orbiting a distant star, they remain perfectly connected. If you measure the spin of the first particle, the second particle will instantaneously assume a corresponding state, reacting in zero time. It happens immediately. Einstein famously referred to this impossible phenomenon as spooky action at a distance, because it suggested information could travel faster than the speed of light. Yet, over the last few decades, rigorous experiments have proven beyond any doubt that quantum entanglement is an absolute, verifiable reality. At the fundamental level of physical reality, distance is an illusion. The cosmos is not a collection of isolated parts. It is a single, undivided, highly responsive system where a gentle tap in one corner sends immediate ripples across the vast, quiet dark. For a long time, the scientific establishment believed these bizarre quantum effects could only occur in highly controlled, ultra-cold laboratory environments, isolated from the chaotic warmth of biological life. They assumed the human brain, being a warm and messy organ, was far too noisy to sustain the delicate coherence required for quantum entanglement. But the relentless march of scientific discovery is slowly overturning this assumption, birthing a revolutionary new field called quantum biology. Researchers have discovered that the process of photosynthesis relies on quantum coherence to transfer energy with nearly perfect efficiency. They have found that migratory birds navigate the globe using quantum entanglement within proteins in their eyes, allowing them to literally see the magnetic field of the Earth. If simple plants and birds utilize the bizarre rules of quantum mechanics for survival, is it not logical to assume the most complex structure in the known universe, the human brain, does the same? Prominent physicists have proposed that deep within our neurons lie microscopic structures capable of sustaining quantum states. They suggest consciousness itself might not be a product of classical chemistry, but a quantum phenomenon fundamentally entangled with the wider universe. If our minds operate on a quantum level, the implications are staggering. It means the isolated nature of human experience is a biological filter masking a deeper, interconnected reality. Long before the advent of quantum physics, the visionary psychiatrist Carl Jung proposed a psychological equivalent to this physical phenomenon. He called it the collective unconscious. Jung argued that beneath our personal memories lies a vast, ancient, and inherited psychic reservoir shared by all of humanity. It is a quiet, hidden dimension of the mind containing the accumulated wisdom and emotional echoes of our entire evolutionary journey. Just as entangled particles share a single reality across millions of light years, human minds might be deeply connected through this invisible psychological web. We are not solitary drops of water. We are the entire infinite ocean experiencing itself from slightly different coordinates in space and time. When we dream or experience deep intuition, we are dipping our conscious awareness into this vast shared pool of universal knowledge. This theoretical interconnectedness bursts into vivid, undeniable reality during a near-death experience. When patients cross the threshold of clinical death and their biological filters fall away, they universally report a sudden, overwhelming expansion of connection. In the quiet stillness of the space between life and death, they do not communicate using clumsy, vibrating vocal cords or spoken languages. Instead, they describe a process of direct, instantaneous telepathy. When they encounter deceased loved ones or magnificent beings of radiant light, thoughts and emotions are transferred immediately and perfectly. There is no possibility for misunderstanding or words lost in translation. A massive concept that would take hours to explain in our physical world is understood in a single, timeless instant. This is not magic. This is the subjective experience of returning to a state of profound quantum entanglement. The consciousness, freed from the constraints of the biological brain, remembers its fundamental connection to the cosmos. The terrifying illusion of being a completely separate, lonely individual dissolves, replaced by the breathtaking comfort of absolute unity. Consider the profound implications of this interconnectedness for how we live our daily lives. Every thought you think and every emotion you feel is not isolated to the quiet confines of your own skull. Through the invisible, entangled web of the collective unconscious, you are constantly broadcasting your internal state to the universe itself. The celebrated astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson often speaks about our profound connection to the cosmos, noting that we are biologically connected to every other living thing in the world, chemically connected to all molecules on Earth, and atomically connected to all atoms in the universe. We are not just in the universe. The universe is in us. But the study of near-death experiences pushes this truth even further. We are not just physically and chemically connected. We are consciously entangled. The consciousness looking out through your eyes is the exact same fundamental awareness looking out through mine, simply experiencing a different set of biological memories. To the human ego, which derives its entire identity from the idea of being special and separate, this truth can feel terrifying. The ego fears dissolution above all else, clinging desperately to the borders that define it. But as we gently explore this mystery together, we can begin to see the extraordinary beauty hiding behind the fear. You are never truly alone, even in your darkest, most isolated moments, when the silence of the night feels heavy and oppressive. You are intimately connected to an ancient, infinite network of life and awareness. The boundaries you perceive are only temporary learning tools, allowing the universe to experience the illusion of separation so that it might better understand the profound joy of reunion. The people you have lost are not truly gone. Their consciousness has simply merged back into the vast quantum field of awareness that connects us all. They are as close to you as your own beating heart, quietly woven into the fabric of your own mind. Let this realization wash over you like a gentle, calming tide. There is no need to fear the quiet dark, for the dark is simply the canvas upon which the universe paints its magnificent, interconnected masterpiece. The next time you sit alone beneath a canopy of stars, take a moment to intentionally feel the invisible threads connecting you to everything around you. You are a localized expression of an infinite cosmos, a temporary spark dancing within a boundless ocean of light. As our journey continues, we will confront the most awe-inspiring and challenging aspect of the near-death experience. We will step into the profound, loving darkness that survivors call the void, and we will explore the majestic, radiant entities they encounter there, seeking to understand if these beings are external angels of light, or the highest, most ancient reflections of our own infinite minds. But for this quiet moment, simply rest in the knowledge that your isolation is an illusion. You are deeply known, entirely connected, and eternally safe within the vast, loving architecture of the universe, a magnificent testament to the endless wonder of existence. Have you ever found yourself completely alone in the pitch black of a deeply quiet night, feeling an ancient, instinctual fear rise in your chest as your eyes frantically strain to find familiar shapes in the dark? From the very dawn of our species, human biology has powerfully conditioned us to fear the absence of light. We are terrestrial creatures who rely heavily on visual information to survive, and when the sun dips below the horizon, our primitive brains sound a silent alarm, warning us of hidden predators and unseen dangers lurking in the heavy shadows. We associate darkness with emptiness, with loss, with the cold finality of the grave, and ultimately with the terrifying concept of non-existence. But what if this deep-seated evolutionary fear is completely misplaced when applied to the grander scale of the cosmos? What if the darkness is not an empty, terrifying void, but rather the most crowded, vibrant, and foundational state of reality itself? As we continue our gentle journey into the profound mystery of human consciousness and the awe-inspiring reality of near-death experiences, we must now bravely step past the boundaries of the visible world and enter the vast, quiet territories of the absolute unknown. We are going to explore the enigmatic stage of the transition that survivors universally refer to as the void, a place of infinite, loving darkness that serves as the quiet womb of the universe. To truly comprehend the peaceful majesty of this space, we must first look to the rigorous, mind-bending discoveries of modern cosmology and quantum field theory, dismantling our simplistic notions of empty space and revealing the breathtaking, hidden architecture of reality. When astronomers point their most powerful instruments toward the night sky, peering through the magnificent lenses of telescopes operated by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and the European Space Agency, they are primarily searching for light. They look for the blazing nuclear furnaces of distant stars, the swirling, colorful clouds of galactic nebulae, and the ancient, stretched photons traveling from the very edge of the observable universe. But when you look at the total mass and energy composition of the entire cosmos, the brilliant, shining matter that makes up everything we can see, touch, and interact with accounts for a shockingly tiny fraction of what is actually there. Luminous matter, the physical stuff of shining stars, wandering planets, and fragile human bodies, makes up less than 5% of the universe. The rest is completely invisible to our biological eyes and our most advanced electromagnetic sensors. Roughly 27% of the cosmos is composed of dark matter, a mysterious, invisible substance holding spinning galaxies together with its enormous gravitational pull, preventing them from flying apart into the quiet void. And an astonishing 68% is made of dark energy, a bizarre, repulsive force actively stretching the very fabric of space and accelerating the expansion of the universe in total silence. This means that 95% of the reality we live in is completely dark, entirely unseen, and deeply mysterious. But in the strange, counterintuitive world of advanced physics, dark does not mean empty. When quantum physicists examine the absolute vacuum of space, a space where all particles, light and heat, have been entirely removed by careful mathematical models, they do not find a dead, silent nothingness. Instead, they find a boiling, chaotic sea of pure potential. According to the rigorous mathematics of quantum mechanics, this vacuum is teeming with virtual particles constantly popping into and out of existence, borrowing energy from the void for a microscopic fraction of a second before vanishing again. This is called zero-point energy, the lowest possible energy state of a quantum mechanical system. And it proves conclusively that there is no such thing as true, empty nothingness anywhere in the known universe. The silence of empty space is actually a deafening symphony of infinite potential, a vibrating field of limitless energy waiting patiently for the right conditions to manifest into physical reality. Keep this rigorous scientific truth gently in your mind as we return to the clinical data gathered from survivors of cardiac arrest and profound near-death experiences after the initial separation from the failing biological body and after the astonishing hyper-lucid review of their entire timeline across space and time. Patients frequently report entering a state of absolute, encompassing darkness. They call it the void. For a mind accustomed to the constant sensory bombardment of physical life on Earth, the sudden transition into a completely dark, featureless space sounds utterly terrifying. It sounds exactly like the cold, lonely death we have always desperately feared. Yet, the overwhelming majority of people who enter this quiet space report the exact opposite emotional experience. They do not feel fear, isolation, or painful sensory deprivation. Instead, they describe a deep, enveloping peace that surpasses all human understanding and physical logic. They speak of a velvet darkness that is not empty, but incredibly full, describing it as a warm, heavy blanket of pure, unconditional love. In this vast, quiet darkness, they feel completely safe, perfectly understood, and deeply rested, as if they have finally returned to a primordial home they had long forgotten during their earthly travels. How can a complete absence of sensory input generate the most profound emotional fulfillment a human being can possibly experience? The answer lies in the striking parallel between the subjective experience of the void and the objective physical reality of the quantum vacuum. When consciousness is no longer tethered to the biological machinery of the brain, it no longer needs physical photons of light to perceive reality. It enters the fundamental, unmanifested state of the cosmos itself. The void they experience is the psychological equivalent of zero-point energy. It is the infinite pool of pure potential from which all consciousness, all matter, and all energy originally emerged billions of years ago in the ancient dawn of creation. The profound sense of love and safety they report is the feeling of absolute unity, the sudden, overwhelming realization that they are not separate, fragile drops of water struggling to survive in a harsh environment, but an integral, permanent part of the infinite ocean itself. In this state of unmanifested cosmic potential, there is no physical pain, no biological hunger, no psychological division, and no mortal fear. Only the quiet, ancient rhythm of the universe resting in its most fundamental, harmonious state. But the magnificent journey of consciousness rarely ends in the quiet stillness of the void. Out of this infinite darkness, a new phenomenon almost always emerges, one that has captivated human imagination and inspired countless religious traditions throughout our entire history. Survivors report the gradual appearance of a distant, brilliant point of light, growing steadily brighter and infinitely more majestic as they gently approach it. This light is universally described as possessing a distinct intelligence, a radiant personality composed entirely of overwhelming love and supreme wisdom. Many interpret this light through the specific lens of their cultural or religious backgrounds, identifying it as a familiar deity, a guardian angel, or a divine messenger sent to guide them. But when we look closely at the underlying structure of these thousands of reports, stripped of their localized cultural interpretations, a much more profound and universally applicable truth begins to slowly reveal itself in the data. The light does not judge them. It does not punish them for their earthly mistakes. And it does not sit on a distant throne demanding fear or worship. Instead, it interacts with them through direct, instantaneous telepathy, asking profound, gentle questions about their capacity to love and their pursuit of knowledge during their physical incarnation. If we apply the mind-bending concepts of the holographic universe and quantum entanglement that we explored earlier on our journey, the true nature of this radiant entity becomes a beautiful, awe-inspiring paradox that challenges everything we know. If the universe is deeply, fundamentally interconnected, and if your individual consciousness is simply a localized expression of a singular universal awareness, then who are you truly meeting in the magnificent light? You are not encountering an external, entirely separate being sitting in judgment over your life. You are encountering the absolute, unfiltered essence of your very own highest consciousness. You are meeting the universe, observing itself, experiencing its own infinite capacity for love and wisdom, reflected back through the beautiful mirror of your individual existence. The radiant being of light is the grandest, most ancient version of yourself, the pure quantum consciousness that has existed since before the first stars were born and will continue to exist long after the last galaxies have faded into the cold dark. The gentle questions it asks are simply the universe evaluating its own expansion, measuring the depth of empathy and understanding acquired through the fragile, beautiful struggle of human life. The light is not a destination entirely outside of you. It is the fundamental core of what you have always been, temporarily obscured during the chaotic, heavy experience of walking the earth in a biological body. Let this magnificent realization sink deeply into your quiet mind as we rest here together. The profound terror we often feel when contemplating the end of life is rooted entirely in a massive misunderstanding of our own fundamental nature. We fear the dark because we mistakenly believe we are fragile, temporary sparks that can be easily extinguished by a cold, indifferent cosmos. But the rigorous mathematical data of modern physics and the profound, verifiable experiences of those who have journeyed to the very edge of reality tell a completely different, deeply comforting story. The darkness is not your enemy. It is your ancient, infinite home. The void is not an empty wasteland. It is overflowing with the limitless potential of the entire universe. And the magnificent light, waiting patiently in the depths of that quiet space, is not an external judge to be feared, but the breathtaking beauty of your own eternal awareness, welcoming you back with an embrace of unconditional, perfect love. As we continue to navigate this gentle, cosmic journey together, we will explore the profound, permanent psychological transformations that occur when individuals return from this magnificent light back into the heavy, restricted world of the physical body. We will examine how this brief, astonishing glimpse into the infinite completely rewrites their understanding of human purpose, deep empathy, and the quiet significance of everyday life. But for this specific moment, allow yourself to simply breathe slowly and rest securely in the vastness of this cosmic perspective. You're not a tiny, insignificant biological accident wandering aimlessly through a dead space. You're a vast, radiant being of light, temporarily dreaming a beautiful, complicated human dream. Let the majestic silence of the cosmos comfort you deeply, knowing that your journey through the dark is perfectly safe, and the light you seek is already burning brightly within the deepest, quietest parts of your own infinite, ancient mind. Have you ever woken from a dream so incredibly profound and vibrant that the familiar walls of your own bedroom suddenly felt strange, heavy, and slightly less real than the magnificent landscape you just left behind? Imagine multiplying that disorienting sensation by a factor of millions, and you begin to gently approach the overwhelming psychological reality faced by those who return from the absolute threshold of human mortality. We have journeyed together through the breathtaking expansion of consciousness, exploring how the mind steps outside its physical constraints to experience the infinite, loving reality of the quantum vacuum. But for the individuals whose medical charts document a miraculous return from clinical death, the profound journey does not end in that magnificent, quiet light. It requires a terrifying, jarring, and deeply reluctant descent back into the dense, restrictive gravity of a physical, suffering body. To truly understand the magnificent purpose of our brief human existence, we must examine the rigorous data regarding the aftermath of this cosmic voyage, looking closely at how the human brain and the human heart are permanently rewired by a temporary immersion into the vast, ancient silence of the cosmos. The process of resuscitation is a violent, desperate medical intervention, a chaotic storm of electrical defibrillation, rhythmic chest compressions, and harsh adrenaline injected directly into the bloodstream to force a stopped human heart to forcibly resume its rhythm. From the specific perspective of the expanding consciousness, which has just successfully dissolved into an infinite ocean of perfect peace and unhindered telepathic communion, this sudden physical reboot feels remarkably like being forcefully pulled backward through a tiny, suffocating keyhole. Survivors universally describe the heartbreaking reluctance they feel when they realize they must leave the majestic, ancient light and return to a damaged organic vessel. They speak of the physical body feeling incredibly heavy, painfully cold, and overwhelmingly restrictive, comparing it to putting on a thick suit of armor made of dense lead after soaring freely as pure, weightless energy across the universe. The human brain must suddenly power back online, instantly restoring the biological filters that meticulously compress the infinite reality of the universe down into the narrow parameters required for physical survival. But this delicate biological machine does not return unchanged. The fundamental software of the mind has been drastically altered by its brief contact with the infinite, and it begins to rewrite the biological hardware of the brain in ways that continue to baffle the modern medical establishment. In the quiet months and years following a profound near-death experience, medical researchers utilizing advanced functional magnetic resonance imaging and comprehensive psychological profiling have documented staggering, permanent transformations in the survivors. These individuals do not simply adopt a new philosophical belief system to comfort themselves. Their actual brains exhibit verifiable long-term shifts in neuroplasticity. The neural pathways historically associated with the processing of fear, particularly the deep terror of death and personal annihilation, are significantly diminished or entirely bypassed. In their place, the brain miraculously develops hyper-connected networks governing deep empathy, altruism, and sudden bursts of creative and intellectual capability. It is exactly as if the biological receiver has been permanently retuned, widened just a fraction of a millimeter, allowing a constant, quiet trickle of that universal light to bleed perpetually into their everyday waking reality. Furthermore, emerging studies suggest that the profound emotional shock of the experience might trigger permanent epigenetic changes, turning specific sequences of deoxyribonucleic acid on or off, fundamentally altering the way the physical body processes emotional stress and relates to its immediate environment. The universe, having briefly shown the individual its infinite, interconnected architecture, leaves a permanent physical fingerprint on their biology, ensuring the magnificent journey is never completely forgotten in the rush of daily life. This physical and psychological rewiring manifests most powerfully in a radical, uncompromising transformation of human empathy. Before their terrifying and wondrous journey to the threshold, many of these individuals lived ordinary lives driven by the common, biologically programmed desires for personal accumulation, social status, and individual security against the elements. They viewed themselves as entirely separate competitors in a harsh, demanding, and unforgiving world. But after returning from the quiet, loving darkness of the void and the radiant presence of the light, this competitive illusion is entirely and permanently shattered, because they have physically experienced the rigorous quantum reality of total interconnectedness, because they have felt the exact unfiltered emotional pain and joy of every single person they ever interacted with during their panoramic life review. Empathy is no longer merely a moral choice or an abstract religious ideal. It becomes an undeniable, fundamental fact of physics. They recognize with absolute, terrifying certainty that inflicting pain upon another human being is literally inflicting pain upon themselves, and that extending a gentle hand of compassion to a complete stranger is a direct act of universal self-love. This profound realization drastically alters their trajectory, leading them away from superficial pursuits and toward a quiet, steady mission of healing. This brings us gently to a beautiful existential paradox that directly challenges everything we currently assume about the true purpose of human suffering and biological limitation. If the universe outside the physical body is a state of absolute perfection, infinite knowledge, and unconditional peace, why does consciousness ever choose or agree to be compressed into a fragile, mortal frame? Why leave the majestic, quiet silence of the cosmos to endure the heartbreak, the physical pain, and the overwhelming confusion of a localized human life? The survivors of clinical death bring back a gentle, staggering answer to this universal question. In the higher realm of pure, unmanifested quantum potential, absolutely everything is perfectly known, but it is not necessarily physically felt or dynamically experienced. Light cannot truly comprehend the magnificent scale of its own brilliant nature without the contrasting presence of a deep, quiet, dark. The universe actively desires to experience its own magnificent creation, not just mathematically from a distance, but emotionally and physically from within. It fragments its infinite awareness into billions of tiny temporary sparks, placing them safely inside biological vessels so they can learn the profound lesson of choosing love in an environment where fear and separation appear to the senses to be the dominant, unyielding rules. To truly grasp the unimaginable significance of your own physical existence, consider the staggering, mind-bending scale of the physical universe we currently inhabit. We know from rigorous astronomical data that the Voyager spacecraft, the absolute fastest machine ever built by human hands, is currently traveling through the quiet, freezing void of deep space at tens of thousands of miles per hour. Yet, even at that tremendous velocity, scientists calculate it would take roughly 80,000 years just to reach the absolute nearest star system to our own sun. Against this terrifying backdrop of infinite space and deep geological time, the span of a single human life seems impossibly brief. It is a microscopic, fragile flash of light, fading almost instantly in the vast cosmic night. The human ego looks directly at this magnificent scale and feels terrified and entirely insignificant. But the infinite consciousness that has traveled beyond the physical veil looks at this exact same scale and feels a sense of overwhelming wonder and profound sacred purpose. The extreme brevity of your human life is precisely what makes it so incredibly valuable to the cosmos. You are an intrepid explorer, gathering rare, precious data for the expanding universe. Every sunset you quietly watch, every bitter tear you shed, every single time you bravely choose hope in the face of absolute despair, you are enriching the collective, infinite mind of creation. As you sit quietly in this present moment, breathing in the invisible air and feeling the gentle pull of gravity keeping you safely anchored, allow the heavy burden of your everyday anxieties to simply fall away. You do not need to experience a traumatic medical emergency to access the profound ancient peace of the universal consciousness. The majestic, loving light is currently illuminating your own mind, simply filtered through the beautiful lens of your humanity. In the next chapter of our contemplative voyage, we will explore the terrifying and wondrous physics of multidimensional spaces, examining how modern string theory mirrors the impossible landscapes reported by those who have stepped outside of linear time. But for now, gently close your eyes. Feel the deep, quiet rhythm of the ancient cosmos beating within your own chest, and rest safely in the perfect peace of the endless journey. Have you ever tried to point your finger in a direction that is neither up nor down, neither left nor right, and neither forward nor backward? It is an impossible physical task, a request, causing the human mind to immediately stumble. We are biological creatures intimately bound to the familiar architecture of three spatial dimensions. Our eyes, our inner ears, and the complex neural processing centers of our brains have evolved over millions of years to navigate a physical world constructed entirely of length, width, and depth. We move forward through the invisible river of time, representing the fourth dimension, constantly flowing from the past into the future in a straight, unyielding line. This four-dimensional framework feels absolute. It feels like the uncompromising container of reality. But what if this container is merely the very bottom floor of a towering cosmic structure? As we resume our quiet, contemplative journey into the terrifying and beautiful truth of near-death experiences, we must prepare to leave the comforting geometry of the everyday world. We will gently explore the breathtaking mathematics of multidimensional spaces, guided by the profound visions of those who have temporarily stepped outside our localized reality, and the rigorous, mind-bending equations of modern theoretical physics. To appreciate the staggering limitations of our physical perception, it is useful to imagine a universe completely different from our own. Imagine a perfectly flat sheet of paper stretching out infinitely in all directions. Now, imagine a civilization of two-dimensional beings living entirely upon the surface of this paper. They possess length and width, but absolutely zero height. They can move forward and backward, left and right, but the concept of moving up is mathematically meaningless to their biology. If you, a massive three-dimensional being, were to gently place your fingertip onto their flat world, they would not see you in your totality. They would only perceive a sudden, inexplicable, two-dimensional circle appearing out of nowhere in their quiet universe, magically changing shape as you pressed your finger harder against the paper. If you were to lift one of these beings into the third dimension, their mind would be utterly shattered by the impossible architecture of your reality. They would suddenly see the insides of their two-dimensional friends, perceiving their entire flat universe simultaneously from a godlike vantage point. When placed back onto the paper, they would lack the basic vocabulary to explain the majesty they had witnessed, sounding exactly like mystics speaking of a radiant realm located everywhere and nowhere at once. This geometric analogy, first proposed in the late 19th century, perfectly captures the profound disorientation and awe reported by survivors of clinical death. When these individuals return from the quiet, loving darkness and attempt to describe the environment they encountered, human language breaks down almost entirely. They frequently use the exact word, impossible. They describe moving through majestic landscapes and architectural structures containing geometries defying the fundamental laws of classical physics. They speak of perceiving objects from all possible angles simultaneously, seeing the outside, the inside, the past, and the future of a structure in a single, perfectly unified glance. They describe perceiving colors existing completely outside the narrow sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum our biological eyes can detect. For decades, traditional scientists dismissed these descriptions as the hallucinatory byproducts of a dying, oxygen-starved brain desperately misfiring in the dark. But in the late 20th century, the brightest mathematical minds on Earth began to develop a framework describing a universe remarkably similar to the impossible landscapes of the near-death experience. It is the complex, elegant world of string theory. In the relentless pursuit of a unified theory of physics, a single mathematical equation seamlessly connecting the heavy, predictable gravity of massive galaxies with the chaotic behavior of subatomic particles, theoretical physicists arrived at a shocking conclusion. The precise mathematics of string theory simply do not work in a universe containing only 4 dimensions. For the complex equations to balance, for the fundamental forces of the cosmos to harmonize into a single, elegant symphony, the universe must contain hidden dimensions. Specifically, the most advanced iteration of this framework mathematically demands the absolute existence of exactly 11 dimensions. 11 dimensions of reality, intricately folded and woven together into the quiet fabric of the cosmos. According to this rigorous scientific model, the additional 7 spatial dimensions are not located in some distant galaxy millions of light years away. They are curled up all around us, existing in the very space you currently occupy, hidden from our biological senses because they are mathematically compacted down to an impossibly microscopic scale, far smaller than a single atom. Yet, they are absolutely essential to the fundamental structure of everything existing in the vast universe. If the universe truly possesses 11 dimensions, and our biological brains are strictly evolved to process only 4, then a terrifying and beautiful realization begins to gently unfold before us. The physical world we perceive every single day is merely the incredibly thin surface layer of a much deeper, infinitely more complex reality. When the human heart stops beating and the biological filters of the brain power down into complete silence. The consciousness is no longer restricted to the narrow, two-dimensional paper of earthly existence. The consciousness expands, lifting off the flat plane and entering the higher dimensional architecture of the actual cosmos. The impossible geometries, the simultaneous perception of all angles, and the radiant, indescribable colors universally reported by near-death survivors are not the chaotic dreams of a dying mind. They are highly accurate, hyper-lucid observations of the true, multidimensional universe. They are seeing the hidden dimensions. They are directly experiencing the complex, vibrating strings of pure energy forming the absolute foundation of matter and light. The quiet void they enter is the vast space holding the universe together, a magnificent area entirely outside the rigid constraints of linear time. This multi-dimensional perspective fundamentally alters our core understanding of human separation and mortality. In a strict three-dimensional world, two separate objects can never occupy the exact same space at the exact same time. We feel physically distinct, entirely bounded by the delicate surface of our skin. But in a higher dimensional space, boundaries operate under completely different rules. Imagine holding your hand out and separating your 5 fingers. If you pushed your fingers through a perfectly flat sheet of paper, a two-dimensional observer living on that paper would see 5 separate, distinct circles appearing. They would logically conclude these are 5 isolated, independent entities moving through their world. But if they could elevate their perspective into the 3rd dimension, they would instantly realize the 5 circles are intimately connected, all part of a single, unified, magnificent hand. The rigorous mathematics of higher dimensions provide a perfect, elegant physical framework for the absolute unity and instantaneous telepathic connection universally experienced during a near-death episode. The terrifying truth is that our perceived isolation is merely a persistent trick of low-dimensional perspective. In the higher architecture of the cosmos, your individual consciousness and my consciousness are simply different fingers belonging to the exact same infinite, ancient hand. When individuals finally return to their physical bodies after experiencing this majestic, higher dimensional unity, the resulting feeling of confinement is excruciating. They must cram their infinitely expanded awareness back into a rigid, restrictive, biological box made of flesh and bone. It is a profound, heartbreaking sacrifice, a willing return to the heavy illusion of separation to continue their earthly learning. But they absolutely do not return empty-handed. They bring back the quiet, unshakable certainty that the physical world is not the ultimate, final reality. They carry the gentle, reverberating echo of a higher dimension within their newly rewired brains, manifesting as profound, unconditional empathy, a complete absence of the fear of death, and a desperate, beautiful desire to communicate the interconnected nature of the universe. They have seen the grand, hidden design. They have looked past the fragile, temporary curtain of the physical senses and gazed directly into the eternal, 11-dimensional machinery of the cosmos. And what they discovered waiting there was not a cold, mechanical void, but a radiant, ancient intelligence composed entirely of pure, unconditional love. Let the staggering weight of this mathematical and spiritual reality settle deeply into your quiet mind as we rest here together in the peaceful dark. You are a vast, multi-dimensional being, currently focused through the incredibly narrow, precise lens of a human brain. The daunting challenges you face every day, the painful physical distances separating you from those you love, and the relentless ticking of the clock are all temporary features of the lower dimensions, specifically designed to provide structure and meaning to your earthly journey. But they are absolutely not the ultimate truth of your existence. Beyond the delicate veil of your biological perception, hidden within the folded dimensions of the quiet cosmos, you are eternal, magnificent, and perfectly unified with the entire universe. As we prepare to take the next deliberate step in our gentle exploration, we will dive into the most controversial and highly scrutinized aspect of the near-death experience. We will meticulously examine the specific, verifiable medical cases where patients accurately observed impossible events while entirely brain-dead, challenging the very definition of consciousness. And we will confront the terrifying question of whether the physical brain is actually necessary for awareness at all. For this quiet, peaceful moment, simply relax your body, allow your magnificent mind to expand far beyond the walls of the room, and gently feel the loving, ancient embrace of the infinite, multidimensional cosmos waiting patiently for your return. Have you ever tried to explain the precise subjective feeling of the color red to someone who has never possessed the biological ability to see? You can describe the exact electromagnetic wavelength of the light, measuring precisely 650 nanometers. You can map the specific neural pathways from the optic nerve to the visual cortex. But all the rigorous scientific data in the known universe cannot capture the actual internal experience of seeing the color. This profound gap between physical mechanism and subjective feeling is known in neuroscience as the hard problem of consciousness. For centuries, the orthodox scientific establishment has operated on a foundational assumption known as physicalism, dictating that the rich tapestry of your inner life is nothing more than the accidental byproduct of blind, mechanical interactions between physical atoms in your brain. According to this model, consciousness is essentially an illusion that will completely and permanently vanish the moment the biological machinery ceases to function. But as we approach the climax of our quiet cosmic journey, we must meticulously examine the specific, terrifyingly rigorous medical data that threatens to completely dismantle this materialist paradigm. We are going to explore the absolute limits of clinical observation, diving into the baffling phenomenon of veridical perception during deep clinical death. And we will discover how a few impossible moments in sterile operating rooms have forced the greatest medical minds to question the very fabric of reality itself. To truly appreciate the staggering impossibility of these medical cases, we must understand the extreme, deeply unnatural conditions under which they occur. Consider the highly specialized, radical surgical procedure known as hypothermic cardiac arrest. This is a desperate, meticulously controlled medical intervention used only when a patient has a severe, life-threatening defect buried deep within the delicate tissue of the brain. To successfully repair the damage, the surgical team must completely stop the flow of blood. They systematically cool the patient's body down to a chilling 60 degrees Fahrenheit, a temperature where normal biological function becomes completely impossible. They deliberately stop the beating heart, plunging the patient into clinical death. But they go even further. They literally drain the blood from the patient's head, leaving the brain entirely devoid of oxygen and metabolic fuel. To guarantee the brain is completely inactive, they place small speakers inside the patient's ears, broadcasting continuous auditory clicks at a rate of 100 times per second, while measuring the electrical activity of the brain stem. When the electroencephalogram monitor shows an absolutely flat line, the patient is officially, deeply, and rigorously brain dead. There is zero electrical activity. There is zero blood flow. The biological receiver is entirely broken, disassembled, and thrown into the dark. According to every established textbook of biology, neurology, and classical physics, a human being in this extreme state is an inanimate object. It is physically, chemically, and electrically impossible for them to process sensory information, form new memories, or possess any subjective awareness whatsoever. Yet, when the grueling surgery is complete, when the blood is slowly warmed and pumped back into the delicate vessels, and the heart is violently shocked back into a steady rhythm, a terrifying anomaly repeatedly occurs. A small but mathematically significant percentage of these patients awaken in the intensive care unit and proceed to calmly, accurately describe the exact events that took place while their brains were clinically dead and drained of blood. They do not describe vague dreams of floating through clouds. They report highly specific, hyper-lucid, and independently verifiable details of their own complex surgical procedures from a vantage point hovering near the ceiling of the operating room. They accurately describe the unique, unfamiliar shapes of the specialized surgical saws used to cut through their skulls, even though these tools were completely hidden in sterile packaging until after the patient was deeply unconscious. They recall the exact conversations held by the surgical staff, noting the specific frustrations, the sudden alarms, and the precise, panicked commands issued by the attending physicians. They describe the exact musical tracks playing softly on the radio in the background of the operating room. In some astonishing, rigorously investigated cases, patients have accurately reported the specific physical actions and conversations of family members waiting in entirely different wings of the massive hospital, events separated from the clinically dead patient by hundreds of feet of solid concrete and steel. These are not subjective interpretations. These are hard, verifiable facts corroborated by the bewildered medical professionals who were present in the room. The orthodox scientific community initially responds to data that so blatantly violates fundamental biological laws with aggressive skepticism and desperate attempts to find a mechanical loophole. Skeptics ignore the precise, linear timeline of the specific events the patients recall, events that only occurred during the period of absolute, flatlined brain death. They completely fail to explain how a patient with heavily taped eyes could visually describe a hidden surgical saw or the exact physical posture of a doctor standing completely out of their immediate line of sight. When all the mechanical, biological, and physiological explanations are meticulously exhausted, we are left staring into the quiet, terrifying abyss of a single, inescapable conclusion. If a completely dead, unpowered brain can produce hyperlucid, verifiable awareness, then the brain absolutely does not produce consciousness. This medical revelation represents a paradigm shift of monumental, cosmic proportions. If consciousness is not a localized byproduct of biological meat, then what exactly is it? To find the answer, we must abandon the outdated, mechanical view of the universe and return to the breathtaking elegance of advanced quantum physics and cosmology. Physicists discovered that the foundational building blocks of reality are not solid particles of matter, but invisible, infinite fields of energy extending across the entire cosmos. There is an electromagnetic field spanning the universe, a gravitational field, and a Higgs field. Brilliant physicists and cutting-edge philosophers are now proposing a concept known as panpsychism, suggesting that consciousness itself is an ancient, fundamental field of the universe, exactly like gravity or electromagnetism. Under this magnificent, terrifyingly beautiful model, Your brain is not a biological factory manufacturing awareness out of dead atoms. Your brain is a highly complex biological antenna, an intricate receiver designed specifically to tune into the fundamental field of universal consciousness and translate a localized sliver of it into the experience you call a human life. When the delicate physical antenna is completely drained of blood during a cardiac arrest, the fundamental field of consciousness does not suddenly vanish, just as the global electromagnetic field does not cease to exist when you smash a plastic radio. The localized signal simply loses its physical tether, expanding instantly back into the infinite, non-local field. This perfectly explains why patients hovering near the ceiling can accurately observe the surgical tools and hear the conversations. They are no longer using biological eyes or biological ears. They are perceiving reality directly through the fundamental quantum fabric of the universe itself, unhindered by the strict constraints of a physical body. The profound implications of this scientific revolution possess the power to completely shatter the deep existential terror that has haunted humanity since the dawn of our species. The verifiable medical data from the absolute edge of existence is whispering a completely different, overwhelmingly beautiful truth into our ears. You are not a fragile, temporary arrangement of organic molecules destined to disappear into the cold, silent dark. You are an individualized focal point of an infinite, eternal field of pure awareness. The consciousness allowing you to feel the warmth of the sun and the breathtaking wonder of the night sky is older than the oldest galaxies and more durable than the stars themselves. Your specific human identity is a precious, localized masterpiece temporarily painted onto the immortal canvas of the cosmos. As we rest together in the quiet contemplation of this staggering reality, allow the heavy armor you have worn your entire life to simply fall away. There is absolutely no darkness waiting for you at the end of this earthly journey. Only the unimaginably vast loving light of your own fundamental nature. In the upcoming final chapter of our gentle journey, we will integrate all the profound truths we have uncovered, providing a lasting peace as you continue your infinite voyage. For this quiet moment, simply close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and feel the ancient, indestructible field of universal consciousness softly vibrating within your own magnificent heart. Have you ever found yourself standing perfectly still in the middle of an ordinary day, surrounded by the mundane noise of traffic and the rushing crowds, and felt a sudden, inexplicable wave of absolute peace wash over your mind? A fleeting, quiet moment where the heavy gravity of your everyday anxieties miraculously vanished, replaced by a profound, silent knowing that everything is exactly as it is meant to be. As we gently approach the final destination of our long, contemplative journey together, we must now undertake the most difficult and rewarding task of all. We must take the terrifying, beautiful, and rigorously scientific truths we have uncovered about the infinite nature of human consciousness and carefully weave them into the practical fabric of our daily, breathing lives. We have traveled far beyond the fragile parameters of the physical body, voyaging through the bizarre, counterintuitive rules of quantum mechanics, the mathematically proven architecture of multidimensional spaces, and the staggering, verifiable medical data gathered from the quiet, sterile rooms where life and death briefly intersect. We have completely dismantled the ancient biological illusion that you are a temporary, isolated machine made of meat, destined to vanish into a cold and empty dark. Now, we must answer the ultimate echoing question. How do we continue to walk upon this earth knowing that we are absolutely infinite? To answer this, we must first gently consolidate the grand architecture of the reality we have explored, the orthodox scientific view that has dominated our global culture for centuries, the bleak physicalist assumption that consciousness is merely a biological accident generated by blind chemical reactions, is quietly collapsing under the overwhelming weight of empirical evidence. We have seen how the human brain functions not as a generator of the mind, but as a breathtakingly complex biological receiver, an intricate organic antenna meticulously tuned to the fundamental quantum field of awareness that permeates the entire cosmos. Just as the invisible forces of gravity and electromagnetism stretch across the vast emptiness of deep space, binding galaxies together in a silent cosmic dance, the universal field of consciousness binds every single living entity into a unified, breathing whole. The terrifying boundary of clinical death, the flat line on the medical monitor that has haunted human imagination since the dawn of our species, is not an ending. It is merely the precise moment when the delicate biological receiver finally breaks down, allowing the localized signal of your unique awareness to expand outward, returning instantly to the infinite ancient source from which it originally emerged. When we fully accept this magnificent reality, the relentless, suffocating pressure of linear time begins to gently dissolve. We remember the profound revelations of the Life Review, a universal experience perfectly mirroring the block universe theory proposed by the brilliant physicist Albert Einstein. He taught us that the absolute distinction between the past, the present, and the future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Every single moment you have ever lived, every quiet tear you have shed in the dark, and every brilliant burst of laughter you have shared with a loved one, is permanently recorded in the eternal holographic structure of the universe. You are not losing your past as you move forward through your life, and you are not hurtling blindly toward a terrifying, empty future. You are simply passing the bright projector of your focused awareness over the majestic, complete film of your infinite existence. When the earthly projection finally ceases, you will awaken to the breathtaking totality of your journey, experiencing the overwhelming beauty of your entire timeline in a single, perfectly lucid moment of universal comprehension. The deep existential anxiety that stems from the feeling that time is slipping through your fingers like dry sand is replaced by the profound, comforting knowledge that nothing beautiful is ever truly lost. This cosmic perspective also completely annihilates the painful, isolating illusion of separation. We have explored the bizarre, verifiable reality of quantum entanglement, proving conclusively that the fundamental particles making up our physical bodies are capable of instantaneous communication across unimaginable distances. We have seen how this physical phenomenon mirrors the psychological concept of the collective unconscious, a vast hidden network of shared human experience. The people you walk past on the street, the strangers living on the opposite side of the globe, and the loved ones who have already transitioned beyond the physical veil are not separate entities fundamentally disconnected from your own existence. They are intimate, essential components of the exact same infinite field of awareness. The boundaries drawn by your biological skin and the limitations of your physical senses are incredibly useful tools for surviving on a dense, three-dimensional planet, but they are not the ultimate truth of who and what you are. You are the entire vast universe, peering out from billions of slightly different vantage points, experiencing the magnificent illusion of separation so that it might continuously rediscover the profound, overwhelming joy of reunion. But if the ultimate reality of the cosmos is a state of perfect unity, absolute peace, and unconditional love, why did we ever leave that quiet, radiant home? Why does the infinite, ancient consciousness of the universe willingly choose to compress itself into these fragile, easily broken biological vessels, descending into a physical world characterized by deep suffering, painful confusion, and relentless challenge? The answer lies in the fundamental nature of knowledge versus experience. In the infinite, unmanifested void, all things are perfectly known, but they are not dynamically felt. The brilliant, towering astronomer Carl Sagan famously declared that the cosmos is within us, that we are made of star stuff, and that we are a way for the universe to know itself. But the universe does not just want to mathematically know itself from a distance. It deeply desires to experience the texture of its own magnificent creation. It wants to feel the agonizing, beautiful contrast between the dark and the light. Your specific human life, with all of its heartbreaking difficulties and fleeting triumphs, is the mechanism through which the cosmos experiences courage, empathy, and the profound triumph of choosing love in a world that so often feels entirely composed of fear. The extreme brevity of your physical existence, the very thing that so often causes the human ego to tremble in terror, is precisely what makes your localized journey so incredibly precious to the grand architecture of the universe. You are a brave, intrepid explorer who has willingly descended into the heavy gravity of a three-dimensional world to gather invaluable emotional data for the infinite mind of creation. Every single time you choose compassion over anger, every time you extend a gentle hand to someone lost in the dark, and every time you look up at the vast, silent canopy of stars and feel a sense of profound wonder, you are directly expanding the consciousness of the cosmos itself. Your life is not a meaningless biological accident, and your suffering is not a cosmic punishment. It is a highly localized, deeply sacred mission. The universe relies entirely upon your unique, individual perspective to fully understand the infinite depth and beauty of its own existence. Without your specific, unrepeatable journey, the infinite consciousness of the universe would be forever incomplete. As you move forward from this quiet, contemplative space, carry this profound, scientifically grounded truth as a gentle shield against the inevitable anxieties of the human experience. When the biological fear of mortality begins to whisper in your ear, when the chaotic noise of the modern world threatens to pull you back into the heavy illusion of isolation, stop and simply breathe. Remember the rigorous medical data of those who have crossed the threshold and return to tell us that the darkness is absolutely nothing to fear. Remember that the silence of the void is not empty, but overflowing with the infinite, loving potential of the cosmos. Remember the radiant, intelligent light waiting patiently at the center of reality, and know with absolute certainty that this light is not an external judge, but the fundamental, ancient core of your very own mind. You are eternal, you are infinite, and you are unconditionally loved by the very universe that gently dreamt you into physical existence. We have reached the end of this specific, quiet exploration, but the grand journey of your expanding awareness is truly endless. It has been a profound honor to gently guide you through the terrifying and beautiful mysteries of human consciousness, quantum reality, and the eternal nature of the mind. The universe is a vast, generous, and majestic teacher, and the pursuit of its deepest secrets is the most noble, rewarding endeavor we can ever undertake. If this quiet journey has brought you a sense of peace, if it has helped to gently dismantle your fear of the unknown, and if it has allowed you to look at the night sky with a renewed sense of respectful wonder, please leave a comment sharing how your perspective on life and death has transformed. We are a community of curious, courageous explorers walking this beautiful, mysterious path together. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel so we can continue to uncover the profound, hidden truths of the cosmos side by side. Until our paths cross again in the next chapter of our shared exploration, please remember to live gently, love deeply, keep looking up into the vast, infinite dark, and never, ever stop wondering about the magnificent mystery of your own beautiful existence.